What's going on, guys? Wanted to make this short little video talking about something that I see all the time, and that is passive income. It seems like literally everybody out there on YouTube is talking about passive income, people on Instagram. It's just the talk of the town. Everybody talks about it 24/7. How do I get passive income? How do I get this? How do I make money while I'm sleeping? And, there's so many misconceptions when it comes to that. And I'm going to talk about that in this video. So again, guys, if you like this video, if this resonates with you, if this makes sense, let me know in the comments, smash the likes on this, and of course, subscribe to the channel. We're a small channel right now. We're trying to grow. So if this resonates with you guys, I'd ask that you support me. And let's just get down to this. So again, people are talking about passive income left and right. And I just want to be clear, it does exist, but not in the way that most people think, especially when it comes to real estate. And I can tell you as an investor who's been buying properties for, about 4 years now, 4 or 5 years, it's not passive at all. In the context of real estate. If you're going to go buy stocks and just not even do anything, then yeah, their passive income exists, but you're going to be earning anywhere from like 4 to 8% APY. That's not very much money unless you already have a lot of money, right? So most of the time when people are talking about passive income, they're either talking about that in the case of a business or talking about in the case with real estate. And I can definitely speak to the fact of, passive income not being passive at all when it comes to real estate and that kind of game. Because again, I have properties. I have properties that I manage myself. And I can tell you it's not passive at all. Even if you have a property manager, it's not completely passive because it's an answer to, the firm that you're working with. If they have questions, they'll ask you. There's always things that are going wrong. They want to get your approval on things like that. Nothing is completely passive. And that's just a massive misconception that I see all over the place. And there's so many people that are chasing passive income when they don't have any active income. And that's something that I see Alex Hormozi talking about a lot. If you guys don't follow Alex Hormozi, I'm assuming you probably are living under a rock. He's like one of the smartest guys out there. But he talks about this all the time. He said, you need to focus on your active income over your passive income. And I tend to agree with him when it comes to that because active income is how you develop more passive income. The more active income you earn from your job, from your business, from your side hustles, whatever it might be, the more passive income you're going to be able to make in the form of different investments. But you have to keep in mind that the things that you're investing in, again, it depends whether it's real estate, crypto, stocks. Crypto and stocks are fairly passive if you're not, involved in trading on a daily basis. You just buy and hold and just DCA in. Of course, that is passive, but you can only get so much from that unless it's crypto. That's a completely different game. We'll talk about that in another video. But in the context of real estate, again, there's just so many people that think it's passive, and it's just not at all. You have to find a deal, you have to source a deal, you have to fund a deal. Once you're funding the deal and you're actually, under contract to buy a property, you have to do all this different kind of paperwork, jump through these hoops, inspect the property, check all these different boxes. And then once you do all that, that's when you just actually buy the property, right? That's not even managing tenants. That's not getting tenants. That's not finding tenants. That's not screening tenants. That's not collecting money, which, by the way, is very difficult to do depending upon what game you decide to play in real estate. More on that in another video. But there's just so many misconceptions out there with all kinds of stuff. But passive income is definitely one of them, man. You guys need to focus on making more money. This applies to like 99% of the people watching this video, and myself included. We need to focus on making as much money as we possibly can so that we can dump that cash into assets. That's the game. The game is not to go out there and just find assets to be able to make, $300, $400, $500 a month from a property. That's not what you want to do, right? You want to earn as much as you possibly can, through your business, through your job, whatever it might be, whatever you guys have going on. Earn as much as you possibly can, save that money, and then invest that money in a property or a business or a asset, crypto, whatever it might be. Again, not financial advice, but you want to invest that into something that is going to pay you a return. And you have to understand going in that if you're doing real estate, it's probably not going to be passive, especially if it's your first deal. It shouldn't be passive, right? You don't want to just hand it off to somebody else because you're not going to learn that way. Right? So when you're cutting your teeth and getting started in real estate, you have to understand that, you want to be fairly involved when you first get started so you understand how things work, right? Does that make sense? You don't want to just buy a property and just hand it off to somebody that you don't even know and hope that everything goes well because it's not, right? You have to get your hands in the game. You have to understand how things work. You have to understand systems and how to build teams and how to, put all these pieces in place so that once you actually are able to scale, you have those, pieces to that puzzle already figured out, and it doesn't take you as much work to actually get those things done. That's the game, right? You want to be active when you first start off in real estate, to learn as much as you possibly can, get your hands in the game, figure out how this kind of stuff works, ideally manage it yourself if you're fairly close to the property, find tenants yourself, do all the stuff yourself for the first 2 or 3 deals that you buy, so that you understand how this stuff works. And again, that's not passive at all. It's like a full-time job almost, right? Depending upon how many properties you have. And you have to understand this going in because, again, I had this misconception, and there's so many people out there that have the same misconception that it's easy, it's passive, you're just going to buy a house, buy a duplex, buy a property, and rent checks just fly in. And that's just not the case. Most of the time there's going to be issues. That's just the nature of the game. You have to understand that going in so you don't just get into something and are completely blindsided once you get inside thinking, oh my gosh, this is a lot of work. Yeah, it is a lot of work. It's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? Common sense. So understand that, guys. Understand that, especially in the context of real estate. Passive income does exist, but you have to build systems. You have to, find the right properties. You have to be able to bring on the right people who can help you out with that. That's how it becomes passive at some point, right? And even then, even the most experienced and, savvy real estate investors and business operators that I know that are fairly hands-off, they're still involved to a certain degree. So it's not even completely passive at that point either. They have a lot more leverage because they have more people helping them. They have systems built out and they understand the game. So you guys, you have to understand that. Again, big misconception going around with passive income. I fell for it. You guys have probably fallen for it. Just understand this going in. It's not passive, and that's a good thing, right? You need to focus on building your active income, stack as much cash as you possibly can, educate yourself as much as you possibly can. That way, whenever you do pull the trigger on buying a property in this example, you know what you're doing and you have some kind of idea on what to expect. So I hope this helps you guys out. I hope this clears up some misconceptions that I see out there. Again, there's so much junk and noise from people who have never even bought a property or, had a business or anything like that, just talking about passive income. And it's just not what you should be focusing on for, especially early on in your career or your investing career. So I love you guys. Support the channel. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I am, but, let me know if I am. So I love you guys. Support the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.